Okay, hello. It's that time of the week again where we critique some people's work from the Discord server, which is always fun. Here we are. And the first person that wants to be critiqued is Loon with this lovely image. It's very nice. And Loon has said, I would like some help with just values and framing on this one. I wanted a really cool shot of my character in front of the dragon, but I feel like the values are both too light in the bright places and too dark in the shadows. My character blends into the rest of the dragon, or the chest of the dragon. I just tried to make it look dynamic. Overall, this is just a first draft for an illustration that I would like to work on. Okay. That seems to make sense to me. I think one of the things that you want to watch out for, that you are doing here, is, let's see, wonder why my brush settings aren't working. Give me a sec. Just get my keyboard shortcuts going. Right. One of the things that I think you're doing is you have this framed image, and then on top of that you have like, well, here's the thing. So that's, if we imagine this as being sets of planes going backwards in space. Because that's effectively what it is like image planes. So your characters on one, we'll just represent them as a circle. Then we'll represent your dragon as a box. And then there's like all sorts of magical stuff going on behind that. Okay. And what you're doing is you're saying that any frame closest to us is dark and any frame furthest away from us is light, effectively. So you get this gradient where you're going, this is going to go, let's make it on a separate layer, put it underneath. We're getting dark, and then we're getting lighter, and then we're getting lighter again. It's effectively some kind of gradient going forwards, I think. And what I think you would be better off doing, if we just copy this, and we'll copy it again, angle it inwards or something. Oh, hello, someone's just put their mic on.
Hello.
How are you doing? You just hanging around. Oh, it's DK. What I think you'd be better off doing is alternating. So, you kind of want to have this staggered effect, right? Where you have dark that's silhouetted on light, that's silhouetted on dark, that's silhouetted on another light. You know, that's not all that different. That's silhouetted back against dark. What would that look like here? Well, it might look like this is a dark foreground plane. That's fine. And then we can have some kind of light coming in. So this bit's going to be light. And then we can say, well, actually, we're going to make our whole dragon dark again. Yeah, comparatively speaking. Right. And that dark dragon is silhouetted on light, but then the character is light silhouetted on dark. and maybe we, make the background even lighter. And you could still have those crazy brim lights. I really quite like that. But this character has to contrast the thing that they're up against, right? Because if they're just one gradation away from being the same value, then we're not getting that contrast at all. And then maybe we could, work in here and start playing with where this guy's connecting with the floor and putting all sorts of information and whatnot in there. But we could invert that. So that's obviously insane. Right? But we could have the same idea, but actually the character is dark, silhouetted on light, and then the dragon is light, silhouetted on dark. And then the background is, we've got dark silhouetted on light again with this thing. And so you just keep swapping between dark and light and dark and light and dark and light to make these planes that recede into the distance. You could have an overall gradient set up still without it sort of taking over everything, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. I'm not sure if you're in the VC or anything. But that's the general idea, is that when we're staggering planes, we can play around with that kind of a thing. The other thing with this that I feel flattens it even more is that this thing is reinforced by just the composition. Like there isn't a particularly huge amount of overlap between this that I'm assuming is some kind of foreground rocks or something, is almost a perfect frame that doesn't really touch the dragon apart from the tail around the whole thing. Could we give the dragon maybe a little bit of breathing room across the sides, and then bring that framing further forward in front of it, and assuming it is rocks or something, give it some texture. I don't know. Let's apply this a little. You don't need to do it the whole way. Right, and then, if the dragon has big claws or whatever it's doing, they're going to be silhouetted as well. But the main thing, I think, is just cleaning up a lot of the gubbins. You have a lot of gubbins going on. It's just... It feels like you want us to travel up the image to this dragon, and then you want to look even further up to this orb. But I don't think that side frame is helping. I think it's boxing everything in and making it feel less powerful. Maybe this part of the tail, when it turns around, picks up a lot of that light, and so again we have like that difference in shape. We can silhouette that, but everything is just shapes on top of shapes. If we want it to get slightly darker at the corners, we can, but let's make that maybe more abstract. Let's have a go. Redder, bluer. Well, thank you, Fish Flops. I'm glad someone likes my beard. Something like that. There are other ways that you can play around with this idea that you get light silhouetted on dark, silhouetted on light. Something like a simultaneous contrast you could play around with. So a simultaneous contrast might be the idea that you get one contrast that's like this, and then like a gradient, and then you could have a contrast going the opposite direction. So we've got one contrast that's going dark to light, and then we're getting our subject that's doing the opposite simultaneously. And so in the center there is a crossover. There is a point where the values are pretty much the same. Right. But the top and bottom of the character are highlighted, which is kind of interesting. So maybe we apply that here and see how it goes. So our dragon. Let's give it a go. We'll just do it to there, the bottom of the torso. You know, it could be, I don't think I want to go any brighter than that. But it could be that we actually really play up how bright this thing is, getting darker. You know, maybe in the background we, I don't know, do something to silhouette it a little bit more. And then we take our character, here we'll just represent with this shape, before I die, and we'll do the opposite, not because it makes any particular sense, but because it's high contrast and interesting. So you could do something like that. That would be another interesting approach, I think. I hope this has been helpful. It's a funny one. You're on the right tracks with the illustration. You got some nice cool stuff going on. I would just think about the framing that you've got. You're really boxing this thing in. Maybe you want to box it in. I'm just not sure on exactly what the story is that you're going for. But I think that's cool. Next is a painting study of one of the Cocteau twins, which is pretty cool. Let's get rid of that. In fact, let's just combine all of those. There we go. This person has asked, I would like to know if there are any improvements on the overall expression and proportion. It's pretty good. I think there are a couple of things that we could talk about. They are minor. You're doing a relatively good job of copying what you can see here. You know, some of these features you have angled out and made sharper when in fact they are softer, like that line going around the chin, but so that's a minor thing. I think your ear is a little bit too low down, or at least I'm seeing this indent of hair come through a bit more, and then I'm certainly seeing more hair appear there. I think generally the hair is doing something really interesting, but it might affect the way that we perceive the expression. So one thing that you've definitely done is you have exaggerated just how much hair there is coming off of the top of the head, how much volume there is here from the hairline upwards. That might be an insignificant thing. The way I'm thinking about it is if we have a head that's not cursed at all, right? And then the more of the top of the head, we can't really see much of the top of the head at the moment. It's ang. But the more of the top of the head we're seeing, now the eyes are down here. Right, and now we're getting a lot of the top of the head. The more it makes it feel like the character is looking downwards. Forgive the world's most cursed thing. And so maybe the fact that we can see more hair up here is saying to a viewer, look, the person is looking down. They're looking down with their eyes, but the position of the head is like pretty upright. It's pretty straight on. Whereas if they're looking down with their eyes and their head, then maybe we lose some of the subtlety or some of the interest of that pose. I don't know. Maybe we don't. You know, maybe it's fine. Just something to think about. So I'd be tempted to remove a lot of that, so that the head is once more viewed from just a straight on. But yeah, I think this is really cool. I think maybe there's some space for you to exaggerate these flat shapes even more, and in other areas not exaggerate them. So it's interesting that you've defined this line on the side of the nose. You know, that's something I almost think that we don't need. We can just blend that out. But then where I probably would define, which is the edge of this face, you've left perfectly blank. You know, I like that form, just turning away slightly. Same thing on the hands, right? Really subtle, but getting those forms turning. I don't think there's any harm in getting them turning, and so you may as well. Does that make sense? Thank you very much, my lord. Thank you very much. Other things like this nostril is dark because we can see inside of it. This nostril is facing away from us, and so it is light. Like, it's a small thing. It's a really small thing. I think generally you've done a really good job. You should be happy with this. Maybe the hairline could be a little bit softer. You know? Like these hairs, they do cast shadow on themselves and onto the skin. But the hair is less dense at the hairline. But it's not a proportion thing. The proportions are fine. Yes, I'm going to screenshot that awful little doodle. That's okay. Okay. Bye-bye. Next we have this. You said you also want help with the portraits. You've been trying to break away from just copying values and thinking about underlying planes. You still don't fully understand how values act on them and where to use hard versus soft edges. It's very tricky to conceptualize. When you say you don't understand how values act on a plane, one thing you can do, I saw this is a thing that Jake draws. I can't remember his name. He's got a YouTube channel. Jake Does Art, maybe. Demonstrated pretty well is you can actually just get a piece of paper and make a series of folds in it, right? Or you could bend the paper instead, which averages out those folds, okay? And then hold it next to a light, and you will see incrementally, you know, as the piece of paper turns away from the light, that it gets darker, and you will see by how much it gets darker, and depending on the light source. So my opinion generally with this kind of thing is, if you can go and just observe it yourself, then that's the best remedy. You know, whereas this one is just gonna curve around. You know, maybe it has a core shadow or something. I can tell you in terms of edges what I would do. So I think generally we can categorize things, at least shadows, in terms of core and cast. And so if this is our orb, we're going to have a shadow there. We're going to have a shadow here. Right. The shadow on the orb itself is soft because the light is sort of trying to bend around the object, or you could think of it as the object is turning away slowly, incrementally from the light. The cast shadow is nice and crisp. It's not actually going to be nice and crisp. It's going to be a little bit soft, especially as it gets further away from the orb. But it's much crisper comparatively than the core shadow, because it's light that is blocked by another object. The light's not even getting there in the first place to then fall off. Okay. Jake, don't draw. That's him. That's him. And so let me pull up a full res version instead of a screenshot so that we can really look at these things that you got going. So let's just apply that information here, right? Let's take a shadow. The nose here, okay. So this shadow here on the upper part of the nose, this, okay, that's going to be soft because the ball of the nose is a relatively soft form, okay, and the light is turning away from that form, so that can be soft, okay. But here underneath the nose, like that is hard because that's where the light is being prevented from reaching the top lip. Hopefully that makes sense. Now you've got all sorts of other interplay going on, which is always interesting. Similar deal that we can apply here is like this bottom eyelid. You might want to have a sharper edge on one side and a softer edge on the other side. I think you could always think of shapes that way, is anything that you paint might have a soft edge and a hard edge, and if you combine things in that way, then you get something interesting. So if we take a sphere, we fill it in, and then on top of that I say, well, here's a shape, but I'm going to blend out one edge, right? Well, that kind of looks like a 3D form that's going in. If I blend out both edges, then it doesn't look like anything, it looks like a blob. But if I leave one edge hard, looks like a form. I could do one over here, but this time I blend the other edge, right? And so now I have this like bridge thing going between the two, you know, or two nostrils or something. Could be anything. So there's our regular edge. We could do the opposite. We could put in a light shape and then blend out part of it. Maybe we blend out this part of it. Well, that makes a different form to if we blend out this side of it. So always a sharp and a soft edge. It's pretty rambly. I get that you're trying to think of this as planes, but I still think you could be simpler. Like if you want to think of this as planes, you can join up some of this stuff just for now. Like the side of the nose is not considerably darker than the things around it. You've got this going up into the jaw, which I think is good. I think you're missing this brow coming around and back up. Something like that. But yeah, you're not doing an awful job. It's just about crispening up things and softening things and knowing when and where. The main thing is going to be this. This is an example of, they're both core shadows, like neither of these are cast shadows, but the rate at which these turns are made affects how sharp they are. So this is gradually turning and so it's soft. This is a sharper turn and so it's hard. I hope that makes sense. Let's grab that, put that in. Let's look at this other one that you've brought. we'll open it in browser so that we get a nice proper screenshot of it. So this is another one. Where I think some of these plane changes are stronger than you're giving them credit for, and then other plane changes are weaker than you're giving them credit for. So this plane change here, from the brow ridge going up onto the forehead, this woman does not have a particularly strong brow ridge. That's a softer transition than I think you're giving it credit for. It's definitely there, you're right, you've noticed that it's there, which is good, but I think it's softer. Now this front plane of the brow is almost going up to the tip of that eyebrow and then curving round rather than doing anything else. But I think most of the issues that I would critique this for are probably drawing based. Like again, this nostril, this is a great example. We could make a selection, and we could say on top of that selection, our nostril has one sharp edge and one soft edge. And then we could say that this specular highlight is doing a similar thing. It's got a sharp edge and a soft edge. Right. Whereas this is like one blob. You're not making a statement as to whether or not it's hard or sharp. You know, similar thing with this, the corner of the mouth. We can just look at it, and you're already doing it with the values, so you're making a comparative judgment. You're saying this is lighter than this, or this is darker than this. Just do the same with your edges. Say, look, this edge here is sharper than this whole edge here. And so it has to be sharper. Now, sharper by how much? I don't know. But at the moment, this shape has a uniform sharpness around the whole thing. And what we want is for this crease to have more sharpness. You know, maybe I've overdone it. And then this edge to be much, much softer by comparison. Right, and that's how you get that variety and how you get the form to begin to read maybe a little bit better. I think you've accidentally given her a little mustache, which we'll remove. I wonder how long it takes you to do these, and I wonder if you should be slowing down and just thinking about it a little bit more and treating it almost like this, where you just take a little bit and classify it and go which edges are sharp, which edges are soft, bit by bit. I think that could be useful, you know, because we've got some really interesting complex things happening here where we have this shape for this shadow coming down. Let's say it's that shape, and it's quite sharp at the top, and as it turns around the neck it gets softer, so we could sharpen it up at the top, and then down here we could begin to have that interaction soften, you know. And this is I don't know, maybe it's a bit boring. I really love this stuff. When I'm painting, this is the stuff I take a lot of joy in, is going, look at how this shadow is starting hard and going soft. I find that to be so interesting, that it's worth paying attention to if you can. You know, we're talking about classifying edges. Look at this edge. The silhouette of the face that's silhouetted against, you know, it's light on dark. You've made the decision to soften this, compared with the background, which should probably be a bit darker. You know, this isn't going to be particularly soft at all. Now, whether or not you wanted to copy that element is I guess, a different matter. You know, it's possible you were doing whatever else. But that's a value thing. It seems to me that you're struggling with eyes, so you're thinking about values, but the far eye in both of these images, you've not quite understood the shape of it. You're almost drawing a warped version of this eye in perspective rather than a far eye. Similar deal with this one. Is his eyeballs like touching the side of his head, which shouldn't really be possible. So I'll screenshot that, and I will be told that I cannot, and so I will screenshot it again, and then we'll move on to decays. Yes, that's a really good thing that Milord's just said is an important thing to remember, is you don't have to do this all at the same time. You've given it to me to critique, and so I'm trying to pick up on all these different things at the same time. But you can just sit down and just take one little part of it, could be the nose, could be anything, and just think about how those edges are happening, why they're happening. You know, maybe you take the bottom of the jaw and you could compare it to like a cylinder. You know, how would the light form around this cylinder? Well, maybe like this, you know. So we've got, depending on where the light is, maybe it is just doing that at the very bottom. Like, that's fine. And then you could carry the cylinder round and then say, well, what's my chin? Is my chin like a cube or an egg or both? Barrel of the mouth's definitely like an egg, isn't it? And just start lighting up these primitives, which I think would be cool. Okay, DK. What have you presented me with? You would like to ask for feedback. You wanted this to feel like an old-timey portrait of a young military prince in military service. A young prince in military service. You want to sell this as a prince holding back grief and anger. This poor guy. What's happened? Is it just the fact he's been drawn up into the military? He's not very happy about it.
It's basically what happened is his dad is a bit of a whoremonger, and he let his this prince's mother, you know, she was stricken with illness, and he didn't really care. And when she died, he immediately remarried, and this would be after that marriage. So he would be drafted up into the you know, into becoming
Okay.
into his military service to basically serve and gain combat experience, but he's also very mad.
I'm not getting the mad. I think
I think I just realized I probably sent you an older version of it.
Like an earlier. Do you want to send me an updated version?
Yep. Give me a second. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Those of you in chat, go and watch my latest video if you haven't already. Go and give me some love in the comments. My adoring fans.
And let me just re-upload quickly. And this is it.
Oh, that's way different. Okay. Let's write some notes so that we remember. How would you describe his? Because he's like angry, but it's subdued, isn't it? Is he? He's angry at his father, or just the world, or he's just in a bad mood, or
Mostly his father.
so that's like a resentment.
Mhm.
I think resentment is gonna show itself differently to if you're just having a bad day. And is this meant to be like a? I know you used an old-timey portrait as a reference. Is this meant to be like a portrait that's been commissioned of him in this world, or are you just illustrating him and taking inspiration from that?
No, I was thinking about making it look like a commissioned portrait in the world.
Okay. I think something that makes people look like they're annoyed is having like shifty eyes. Right, so you could have this annoyed face. Some indication that they're biting their lip or something, I don't know. But if they're looking just in the direction that they're meant to be looking, let's assume that that's what's happening. Then it just kind of looks like they're looking off, and it's fine. It looks nice. But maybe it doesn't look as angry as if they're trying to, like, you know, avoid your gaze almost. Like they're miffed. They're looking in a different direction to where their face is facing. Does that make sense? So your guy's
Mhm.
facing down here, but he's also looking down there as well. How simple is it to change that without destroying all of your lovely hard work? That's bonk, 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 bonk. You know, the idea that he's looking somewhere else makes him seem a bit
Mhm.
more annoyed. But it's such a fun thing, these tiny little changes in expression. You know, like the muscles under the mouth coming into play. And you could do this for ages. I think the best thing you could maybe do is take some kind of reference photography of someone that you know. I find that one thing that makes people look annoyed is, without realizing it, this cheek muscle flares up. I did a painting of a friend recently, and I accidentally exaggerated that part of the cheek pressing up against the nose, and it just makes him look a lot more annoyed than he should. Like this, I actually corrected it in Photoshop because initially it was like this, and you see how that sort of makes the corner of the mouth feel like it's being pushed up against the cheek. I don't know. Maybe it's not as noticeable as I think it is, but you know, I think we could just play that up. Make him look annoyed. He's got an incredibly furrowed brow, or like the most furrowed any brow has ever been, but it doesn't actually seem to affect the brow all that much. So, there's something that's not making sense to me there. So if I have my face, let's see, there he is. He's gonna be sad. Right, and if his eyebrows are in a normal place, and then there are his eyes, well, that's one thing. But you're saying, same guy. Here are his eyes. And when you make him angry, it's almost like you're just lifting the back of the eyebrow up. But the back of the eyebrow doesn't really move. Like, the back of the eyebrow should be in the same place. And it's the front of the eyebrow that should really come further down and curve round. And so I would almost expect some of this here to come down and in front of the eye, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like this part of the lid. And just even if it does it a tiny bit, I'm doing it. I'm over egging the pudding here, aren't I? You know, if it just does it a tiny bit in front of that eye, certainly over here, you get that sort of Kubrick stare thing happening, where it's like, Jesus, I'm just drawing little guys today. You know, where you can barely see the pupils coming out from behind this thing. But maybe that would be more of an extreme tilt of the head as well.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder. I like the clenched fist. I wonder if we could make more of a deal of it. Like, has he been given a prop to hold if this is like a family portrait? Like a scroll or something, and he's meant to be holding it carefully, but he's, you know, the fist on its own, I can see it's clenched, but you don't really get a sense of he's really annoyed holding all the anger in, and therefore he's taking it out on whatever he's clenching his fist around. Whereas as soon as you put something in that hand that's being like squished to death, you know, whether it's a scroll or a bunny, like, well, all of a sudden we're this is sort of meaning something a bit more, if that makes sense.
He's actually clenching the cloak, but I don't know how to make the cloak look,
like it's
squished.
coming out of the hand. But it just seems to me that at the moment this fist is sat on top of. I guess you would have to bring up the value of the cloak a bit. At least, you know, the top of it. So have it look like it's going into his hand there. But if it's going into his, maybe he's just pulling it too. You know, and I feel like the other thing that you've done is, and it's not the worst thing in the world, is you've chosen an angle for a fist that isn't particularly descriptive. Like, we're effectively seeing this top plane, which is all facing in the same direction. We're not really getting many plane changes other than up here. You know, whereas if you just changed the angle we're viewing it at, even just slightly, well, now we can see a top plane, a front plane, and a side plane of the same thing. And therefore you could see, you know, cloak going in or coming out if it were slightly different. Does that make sense? So just picking an angle where those planes are more... It's the equivalent of deciding to draw a face at a perfect side profile where things are going to be deliberately flattened versus drawing something at a 3/4 angle where you can show off those forms a bit better, right? But with a hand, so getting maybe more of an opportune angle that you can do that from. But no, this is a tricky one. Those are my suggestions. Give him something to grip onto and be annoyed about. Have him just some kind of indication he could be gritting his teeth or something in there. Or maybe he's, you know, you've almost got his mouth curling back up. Is he just completely scowling like he doesn't want to be there? Necks are quite a good indication of when someone's annoyed. You find that people's necks tense up a bit more. I don't know. Could we get some, like, I don't know, maybe it's not the kind of anger you want, but a lot of blood goes to people's faces and their ears. So maybe play around with that. I think that'd be cool. You know, especially if he's clenching all this. We can get some more blood in his face. That could be cool. But certainly have him look away. Have him look away. I would even. You know, it's not necessarily that the angle of the eyebrow has to change, it's just that it has to come down closer to the eye. But maybe we're getting too obviously angry rather than something that's a bit more subtle. So that's something to think about. Let me screenshot the whole thing. Do you have any other questions before I go on to the next person?
I don't think so. I mean, the general composition of the piece is it's pretty okay, I guess.
Yeah, it's okay.
Do you have any suggestions for the background?
It depends what you want to do with. You're very good at doing these sort of graphic-y shapes to silhouette people on. I'd be much more tempted to have him, you know, actually seated on a chair or something with, like, you know, banners behind him with his family's crest on or something, you know. And they could recede in perspective. They could be doing something that shows off the form in some way or another. Rather than something more simple, but that's just me. That's what I would want to do. Okay,
Thank you.
I'll post this in the Discord. Right, who's next? I can't see usernames, so forgive me. But this is next. Let's put those into that group. Okay. This person has said, "Hello, I need some help here. This is the result of my studies in visual development. In this piece, I aim to tell the story of two people lost in a swamp. I want to convey a horror atmosphere. What do you think are the weaknesses in the artwork, whether from a technical or storytelling perspective? You feel like it still looks amateurish, but you're not sure why." I think one of the main things is that everything has a kind of blurry quality to it. Might be because you're using photos and then like a soft brush, but you know, I would be tempted to have portions of the riverbank be a bit more filled in. Another thing that I think is maybe a little bit disappointing in terms of storytelling here is just how interesting this swamp is. You know, we've got like vertical mangrove trees. Is this land or is it algae? This seems to be land because it comes up onto this rock, but I'm honestly not sure. So like that being left unsure isn't amazing. There are so many other things that are going to be in a swamp. You know, are you going to have? You could have one of these trees is fallen over in the background or something. Like what is it that makes this swamp scary in this horror thing? Is there a creature that's after them? Is it just a dangerous place to be? Is it alligator infested? It could just be scary because it's like a spooky time of day, but if you have a particular story element that you do want to explain. Maybe you don't know exactly why it's scary, maybe it's just a scary place. Why are your two people here? They're just lost? But how did they become lost? Were they on a picnic and they got lost, or were they adventuring and they got lost? So there are a lot of questions that you could ask about this thing, and then begin answering some of those visually. Do you see how even just adding in some more interesting elements into the background got like a big log that's fallen over. Makes these people look very small by comparison. You know, it could be that you've almost set up your frame perfectly to do something like this. Where actually these people are being pursued by some kind of long-armed creature. I don't know. You know, that's watching them from afar. Maybe it's not just one. Maybe there are more. You know, they could be like climbing up the trees and watching them. It seems to me that if you're trying to show off two people scared, you either have to show off those two people or the thing that is making them scared or putting them in danger. I think in yours initially, let's just paste it back in so that we have a version that I haven't painted over. I think in yours initially, you're doing neither. We're not close enough to the people to see their expressions. For all we know, they're having like a great time. I mean, he looks pretty relaxed sitting on the back of his boat there. They've got a nice light. She's in a nice dress. They're just going for an evening ride in the bayou. You know, this could be something from The Princess and the Frog. So we can't rely on their facial expressions or what they're doing. We have to rely on the environment, which is dark, but I think you can do better than just it being dark for it to be spooky. One thing that you always see in like old Disney movies, while we're on the topic of Disney movies, is like spooky shapes, especially like old dead trees and things. So we've got this one here. Could it be that the roots of this tree are going down? Could it be that this tree has, you know, those roots that are like tendrils? Just think about how this would be described if it was in a book, like a horror book. Is the mangrove trees with roots that felt like they were reaching out at you as you went past, you know, and you could imagine how maybe some of that torchlight might affect those and the shapes that you see. I really love this moss stuff over here, but you've only got it in one place, you know. Should it be that there's more of it hanging down? Again, like arms and hands that are reaching out at our audience or our characters. And the more we put of this at the top of the canvas, the more it kind of makes it seem like that's why it's so dark. The canopy's completely covered. What's round the corner where they're going? Is it that actually round the corner there is... There's light, you know? Are they lost, but maybe actually there is light back there, like they're almost at safety before these things attack them? Or is it that actually they're on the complete wrong path and that's why they're lost, and it's only gonna get darker and scarier back there, like they're going into completely unknown territory? You know, either is fine, but you gotta pick one. You gotta do something with that space and that story. So I'm actually planning on making a YouTube video about it because it's happened in a couple of these critique weeks. A lot of the problems that I'm talking about solving are not they're not visual problems. They don't rely on you having any kind of specific technique at hand that you can use. I'm just thinking about what it's like to be an audience member and what my expectations would be of this place. How do I know it's scary? You can answer that question in your head. You know, what exactly is going on? Why are they in this place? How did they get lost? What's the danger? You can start playing around with those if you just reframe the question and make it a little bit more specific. You know, it could be these things. equally, it could be that, like, I don't know, the tree itself is alive. It's got like big teeth. It's like a big it's like a big fat-headed ogre that's underground, and maybe it's like, you know, it's got like another tree root here that's like a hand. I don't know. It's a lot more sort of cartoony, isn't it? Yeah, play around with the story, what you want to do with it. I personally think that making everything blue because it's horror is a little bit overdone, but if it works, then it works. You know, I'd like to see more of these roots coming out. But that's one option. Like I said, another option would be to go, actually, here's my thing. All these trees are in the background. And here we get to see our two characters sat in a boat, you know, and sorry, I'm trying to do this relatively quickly. This lady's sort of looking over her shoulder, and she's sort of holding onto her dress quite tightly because she's scared, and she's looking all around. And the boat guy over here is like completely exhausted. Maybe he's got like an arm hanging off the boat. Is he ill or something? Are they lost because the guy steering the boat as their tour guide's like collapsed? He doesn't know what he's doing. But this is much closer to... It's much closer to the characters, and so you can rely a lot more on their expression and what they're feeling. You know, you could still put little things in the background watching them, or those vines. Right. She's turning away into the darkness. So, you can do wonders with it. You just have to decide on what you're doing and play around. I do think you've done a good job. I know I've critiqued it quite a bit, but it's fun. It is very fun. Oh, my select tool isn't working. Okay. You just need a little bit more storytelling, and that storytelling you can figure out in your head without putting pen to paper. You don't have to draw a thing, right? In fact, you might want to make a Word document or get a piece of paper and write yourself out a list of questions that you are then going to answer. What exactly is happening? Why is it happening? Where is it happening? What's the time period? How are they in the swamp? Why are they in the swamp? What else is in the swamp with them? You know, how are they feeling? We just went over this work with DK. And one of the things we spoke about was, okay, well, he's angry, but what kind of anger is it? Is it like a subdued resentment, or is it like a vitriolic rage? Is he justified in his anger? Maybe. Maybe he isn't, and actually he's the one that's in the wrong. Like, these are all different things that we could display visually, and so got to get our story straight, I think. That's the fun bit anyways, coming up with the story. So, next we have, who's this? Famous concept artist, Thomas Hicks. Wow. What a pleasure. Hello, Tom. Where is he? He's here. He's in. What do you want feedback on, in particular? Just any feedback at all. Anything. Okay. Okay. You know me. I'm a sucker for things happening, motion. Either this thing is parked, in which case it should be. Hold on. Please let this selection work. Yes. Okay. Either it's parked, in which case is it going to be like getting refueled or something? I think you have such a fun collection of ships at this point that you could start making images that have maybe multiple ships. Could it be that you have this ship here and then actually you have a second ship up here that's casting a shadow onto this ship, and so you get more of an interaction between the two? You know, and this ship up here, this is my best Tom Hicks-esque ship. This ship is like docking or whatever else, like it's about to do something. Or it's got like a surveyor man that's like looking at this and he's writing notes. He's going, the engine's faulty or whatever else. I just think the interaction between more things is more good. So yeah, that could be cables, and those cables you can design however you want. Might be that they're like really special refueling cables that go into a very particular part of the ship. I really like having hard surface things contrasted by organic things, and so your ship's kind of already organic, which is nice. But what if we got something like extremely organic? Could it be that this ship has just been through, you know, this planet? You've got some kind of alien life over here. I'm imagining like this whole planet is one of those poisony places in Satisfactory. You know, could it be that the thing's covered in grime and goop, and actually it's docked and there's some people that are like sweeping all of the moss off and cleaning it up? Like I'm thinking about this in reference to actual ships. They've got to be brought into a port and then hauled upwards so that people can get under them and like scrape up barnacles and all sorts of things. And that way your ship is no longer just like an appealing shape floating in a void. It's part of a world where people are doing things with it, and you get to see that sort of storytelling element. I think that'd be really, really cool. You know, could it be that a bit like Avatar, just another idea, that your mega corporation has parked their fueling vessel on an alien planet where there are an arguably more primitive people, you know, and so on top of it, it has like, I don't know, like nets and like arrows and spears poking out the side of it, like it's just been attacked. You know, these are all things that you could potentially do. I think something that would fit your style really, really well is like a ship has been parked and some youths have like graffitied on the side of it. Or, you know, maybe it's abandoned and it's been graffitied. Like, I think that would be so rad. Graffitied Tom Hicks ship. And it sort of fits in with the whole super colourful aesthetic thing that you've got going on. And then you've got like a really bored looking guy that works for the company in inverted commas, and he's sat there, and maybe that's what this ship is. Maybe there's a ship here that's kind of got a fella with like a big hose or a wiper or something, and he's wiping off this graffiti and trying to clean up the ship. you know, painting it fresh again. Like, I'm just thinking about how you can take something that's really big, and at the moment you have this crazy thing that we're all in awe of, and it's like it's a huge spaceship. How can I take something that's really alien and out of this world, like a huge spaceship, and bring it into a human experience that I think everyone would relate to? Like, you know, when you go to work and the subway train has been graffitied, and there's like a poor guy that's been sent to scrub it off or whatever. You know, is this like a petrol station for spaceships, something like that. One thing technically with it that I think is just a result of your process, but you might want to think about, is the light that is hitting this ship is very pure and very light and white, but the atmosphere is so foggy and green that I would almost just expect a lot more of this to be green, or green tinted in some kind of a way or another. You know, everything should lean towards green if that's what you're going for. Alternatively, maybe the atmosphere isn't all green, you know, maybe the ground fog is green, but the sky gets a bit brighter the further up we get. And so again, you're implying something else about the planet. You know, is there even a little bit of blue in the sky? Oh, I don't know. Maybe you want to keep the blue just on your ship. But yeah, I think that's the next thing for you. Is you've got the technicality down. You can make these things, and they just look stunning. They look amazing. It's the story that you're telling with them that I want to see made more relatable would be the word, I guess. So, there you go. That is my feedback. Latish, you're next. So, nope, that's a Tom Hanks ship. This is a big image. No, it's not. That's a Tom Hanks ship. Okay. I'm just going to have to screenshot it because Windows is misbehaving. Which unfortunately kills the resolution. That's as good as we can go. Okay. I think you've done a very good job here. That's your reference. Maybe I could argue that you actually got too much visual noise going and you should flatten out some planes. So, you know, top of the hair here, could that be flatter? Maybe. I think you're doing a really nice job though. A lot of this stuff in the background you've chosen to make lighter. Whereas in the reference, this whole background, I think, is darker and silhouettes everything. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to make it darker. And I'm going to make it silhouette everything. You know, until that tree. And just... the noise and the texture and all of the lovely stuff that you're doing is still there. It's just low opacity. It's just not quite as noisy, which lets us focus a bit more on the characters in the scene instead. Let's have a see. Yeah, same thing here. Can we just represent this in a bit of a quieter way? Group these things a little bit more. I think we can. Even that trampoline is not that dark. And it has you know, a section of it that has a highlight on. God knows what that noise is outside my house. I think this whole bush is going to go darker. And then I think we have one bush shape in the background here that is going lighter. So, do you see how when I remove that, everything's so high contrast in the background that it hurts my eyes a little bit? I think we can bring that down and allow the focus to be on our characters. I don't see why we can't do that. You're painting like every individual hair sometimes for these beards. Similar thing here. Can we represent the beard hair as some more solid shapes? I kind of just want to find ways to simplify some of the stuff that we've got here. Like, there's so much visual noise going on that I think it's overriding the value structure. I think you just got to be careful with the amount of texture you've got to get. The texture has to sit within a clean shape or a clean value group. Like, the texture's still there, I've not destroyed it, but it's sitting within a larger group that is easier to understand. You know, maybe we go back in and we say, well, there is actually a ridge here where the eyebrow is. But I'm going to do that cleanly first. That's generally it. Is I just want you to clean some of this stuff up, you know, the border of the hair here. How clean is that as a shape? Well, maybe you want to go crazy with it, but if everything's crazy, then nothing is. So, crazy by comparison. Okay, I'm going to put this in. There's not much else I'd want to say about it. You got good likeness, which is the hardest bit. You should be happy with that. I don't know who either of these people are, but maybe you've made her teeth shorter. She's got quite a lot of teeth here. This is a lovely little grinning smile, and I feel like you've maybe subconsciously taken her to the dentist or something. You know, there's a difference in height here. Those canines are coming down, which is quite cute, and then these come back up, and then those front two teeth come down again. Whereas on yours, they're all sort of more or less aligned. So that's something to think about. Thank you, DK, for coming. Off he goes. Okay, we've got one more bit of feedback. I swear someone else put feedback in. Maybe there's just one more. I don't know your username, but this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. I'm going to turn off streamer mode so I can see your username, because this is great. Oh, it won't let me turn off streamer mode. Who are you? Who is this person?
It's me. Hello.
It's you! Oh, it's Arius. Okay. This is lovely. I didn't know it was you.
Thank you.
What do you want feedback on?
So
Like,
it's kind of a work in progress. 'Cause,
okay.
I just like sketched it on a whim a couple of days ago, but now I'm just turning it into something else. I got a couple of gripes with it. I'm just not satisfied with the lighting, and I'm also very annoyed with the little film around his neck. I can't get it to look the way I want it to.
This is film. Okay. Okay.
And to elaborate on that, it's like you know that one Adrian brush painting, the guy coming out the whale carcass.
Yes, I don't know that.
I kind of want to do that kind of like wetsuit looking thing just around his neck, but I don't know. I've kind of made it look like water instead. You know?
Yes, I will tell you what I think this is as an image, and
Alright.
you tell me how horribly wrong I am. So initially, when I saw it, I saw this part as like a submarine. This is like a jet ski. This is another submarine. I know now that that's like a hand grabbing onto something, I'm assuming. And then I thought it was a floating head in a like a jacuzzi, because this looks like swirling water. And he's like a techno wizard because he's got like a wizard hat. Like, and I was happy with that. I thought that was really cool. I thought techno wizard in a jacuzzi. It's abstract, but it's really fun. Now that I'm realizing that this is meant to be a body, and this is an arm and a hand, and this is not meant to be water. The irony here is that you've painted the best water that you've ever painted when you're not trying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if...
Sorry, it's not as interesting.
No,
as
it's
Techno
fine.
Wizard.
It's a cool techno wizard. Is this... I don't know if it's just unfinished. Is this bar that he's holding onto part of this...
Oh yeah, it's supposed to be the yellow, plasticky looking thing. I just made that low opacity because I'm in the middle of drawing it.
Okay. How can we make all of these things work together? I think the body is just really, really big. Is he meant to be a huge fella?
Hang on. I think I cropped it off a little bit weirdly.
Oh, because I'm seeing like an armpit up here.
You can see where he's wearing like a poncho. It's Wait, this is the wrong channel.
This might well just be a cropping issue, you know.
There you go. He's wearing like a poncho. It's hard to see, but it like ends up there, and there's like a little slit at the bottom as well, where you can just see that it's.
Okay.
I think he's wearing it over him.
Yeah, I see that now. Okay, maybe it is a cropping issue then. You know, maybe you make the whole guy smaller so that we can see that. It really depends. If this is part of a series of panels in a comic, and you've already established that the character has a poncho on, then it's not a problem. But if this is the first image that a viewer sees, this does not read how you want it to read.
No.
And so you probably just want to reframe the thing so that we can see it from a better angle. That's what I'm thinking. Is this thing going behind his head? This is coming off of his hat, and it's like a lamprey. Not a lamprey.
Yep.
Like a... Is it a lamprey? No, a lamprey is one of them horrible
anglerfish lamp thing.
Anglerfish, that's it. But like in terms of design, what's it doing behind him?
It's right. So a little bit of a lore drop.
Okay,
this guy's like.
I'm excited. The bathtub wizard is getting.
The bathtub wizard is actually walking around in like shoulder deep Neptune, and he's like cleaning the surface with this little thing that he's dragging along next to him. It's like completely bare bones because, like I said, I only thought of this 2 days ago. But the little lamp in the back is so that other people can see him from the distance, like he's a little glint over the horizon, because he has a bunch of other old cleaning buddies that he works with in like a huge sector.
Okay.
And they're all gonna have like different colored uniforms, but sort of the same style.
Maybe this part of the lamp could, you know, attach to the hat in some way or another, to make it more obvious that this is one thing. Because without that, it kind of feels like it's a hat, and then this thing is just coming from behind it from nowhere. But maybe we can do that. I'm worried about this arm. Sorry, bye-bye arm. Is this the yellowy thing? Is that his hand?
Yeah, it's just like a little crappy sketch, but he's gonna have like it's like a webbed glove or something. That's like a webbed looking pattern on it.
I think let's slim him down ever so slightly.
What's gonna be happening in this image is it's gonna be super foggy, so I've omitted the stuff below the water because you're not gonna be able to see it anyway.
How do we
And
make this look more like film?
Yeah.
Make it less blue? Yeah, maybe. I think the problem is that the film is getting brighter around his... Is it meant to be transparent?
It's supposed to be like so tight up against his cheek and top of his neck that you can see his skin through it a little bit.
Oh, okay. You've presented me with a very tricky... This is good. Maybe you should go over his chin. And wrap round more obviously. That is so difficult. You've given yourself such a hard brief. I want to know, is this going... When I'm thinking about it, I'm imagining that it's just going out like that.
Yeah, it's supposed to be taut against the little thing he has around his shoulders.
Okay, well maybe we literally do that then. Is we get these like concentric lines. Like that. And it's not quite as detailed as you had it. But maybe it feels less like water and more like something stretched. And that's why he's got a red head. It's a very fun idea. It's a very, very fun idea. You know, and underneath we can see some of the rest of his head going down. Okay, let's call that problem more or less solved. We'll think about it a bit more. So this is a poncho going down.
Yeah.
And then you want his arm to be here.
Yeah. I need him to be dragging the thing along.
So he's meant to be dragging it.
Yeah, but it's like hovering on the water surface, so it's like he doesn't have to put any effort into it.
I was gonna say, in relation to his objective, which is this way, him and the thing that he's dragging are perfectly side by side. And so, you know, potentially, even if it's just the handle you move to back there, that's where our handle is now. Now you could get this idea that actually we've got an arm here that's going backwards. And as it's going backwards, it's coming out of the water. Punk, 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 punk. And you can get all sorts of interesting creases happening and whatever else. And then you can get his big golden fist with whatever you had going on. but that direction of travel. I think the problem with the arm before. Let me just get it back up because I removed it. Oh, if I actually like cropped it out or something. What have I done? Okay. I think the problem with it before is it's so close to his body that it's like he doesn't have an elbow or an upper arm. So this is his shoulder. This is the arm coming out towards his shoulder. And so it feels like there isn't enough space to have another part of the arm, which is why we don't really think of this as an arm at all. You could also say, well, actually, no, his arm's going down, and then it's going back up. But then you'd have to move this to go down and back up. And even then, it's kind of a bit of a weird, awkward angle if you're dragging something. I know you're saying it's weightless, but an audience is just going to look at it and think he needs to drag it, and so we know what people look like when they drag things, even if he's not putting any effort in. But maybe having that arm behind him says actually they're both traveling in the same direction. He's pulling it because it's behind him. And now we give it enough space, receding in perspective, for it to feel like a full arm where we can see the upper arm and the lower arm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it could still be that wherever your waterline is, let's say that this is your waterline. You know, that the waterline is still doing something interesting. That's my thought. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I thought it was a bit weird, but I was just going along with it anyway.
It's a tricky thing to solve. I really love all these valves and things on the front. This lamp, what's happening is, as a viewer, I don't know if it is a cylinder that is a uniform thickness and it's receding in perspective and that's what's making it feel thinner, or if it's actually a cylinder that is wider on one end and smaller on the other end. And I mean, even that looks like a uniform cylinder receding in perspective. So I think of this as this. I'm going, well, it's getting smaller because it's getting further away. But in order for it to get this small, it's got to be getting so far away that it would be in the water.
No.
Which you could do. Like, that's a fun idea that he's, like, dragging this thing behind him and, you know, it's going to have, like, a wake. The ship is going to have a wake where those things meet. There's going to be, like, a double wake, you know. Like, you could have this thing submerged or play around with this so there's some kind of consistent indication of perspective. Maybe actually it's kind of an interesting part of the design. Maybe you just want to bring it up higher so it's nicely framed by these shapes of the shoulders, right? And that way we don't really have as much of a perspective problem. We see that it is just floating in the air. That's fine. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's very cool. It's very, very cool.
Thank you.
Just that is very cool. These pipes that are like compressed and you just get such a nice sense of the material on them. And this half tone for this material. You're just giving yourself tricky things. I don't know. This is a very obviously intentional. The perspective on this eye, or really his eye should be over there, but I don't know, is that the style of this character, is that he's got eyes that are really, really far apart?
I wanted them to be a bit more far apart. He's like a caricatured old man, you know.
If you're going to put them far apart, I support this decision. But if they're far apart and they're curving around ahead, you probably still want them to be in line vertically, right?
Yeah.
So that eye might have to move up to there. And
Oh,
now
yeah.
they feel like they're far apart, but in perspective still. So it feels like more of a deliberate decision, right?
Yeah, for sure. The thing about around the neck as well,
Mm-hmm.
I still have gripes with it because it connects on his it's like a little lunch lady cap at the top as well, where it connects over the top of his head and covers his ear. And like in an ideal world, I want it to be like that, and then around the base of his neck, there's some slack to it, and then at the edges, it's like taut, which is what I was going for initially, but it just kind of there's no clear transition from it being taut to it having some slack, which is what I think the main issue in my original one is.
It just seems very... Yeah, I guess it would be the direction. I think in your original one, you had all of the things coming down this way and like swirling inwards. Whereas what maybe we want to transition to is things are just coming down this way, and up onto the head or whatever, and curving back out. But actually there isn't as much going on where it connects to the rest of the thing. Could be a little bit, a little bit of tension. But it's pretty much just, by the time it gets here, it's pretty much just tight and flat. I don't know. It kind of makes him look like he's breaking out of a jelly or something.
And then below his chin, if it wasn't up on his chin, would it like crinkle? On the how would that transition look?
Yeah, it could look like it's sort of folding up and doing that, but I don't know, depending on how tight you want it. If it is just perfectly tight around his neck, this strange material that you've invented, then it might just continue under his chin, like that. And that would be okay too. It's a really interesting problem. Maybe get some cellophane. What do people call cellophane? Have I just forgotten?
Cling film?
Cling film, yeah, I've forgotten the British term for cellophane. Yeah, get some cling film and try it out. I don't know. It's one of those things where it's such a weirdly specific material and a material condition that you're trying to paint that the best thing you can do is probably... you're pretty good in Blender. Maybe you can make some kind of wacky material in Blender, or get some cling film and play around with it and see what happens.
I haven't thought of Blender. I might try that.
Yeah. Well, there you are.
Well, thank you.
That's my advice. I think you are the last person as well, so we will proceed to end the live stream. It is really cool, isn't it? Yeah, everyone go and follow Arius. He's very, very cool. Right. Have a good evening. I'm going to go and fill up my drink and do a painting or two or something. Like I said, go and check out the most recent video as well. And if you're watching this on YouTube, every Monday we try and do these live streams. We might have to move the date and time soon because university starts up again and I'm going to be teaching.